So, Father, first of all, thank you very much for coming on. This is a big honor for us here at the Faithful Centurion. A lot of the people who are coming on to our website are also checking out Buck, so they've seen you probably a few times on there. But would you mind, Father, if you could, please just give a short description of who you are and where you're at?
I converted to Orthodoxy right after I finished my degree in theology because I was studying to be a Nazarene minister, but started reading the Fathers and converted not long thereafter. So that was in 1990. And I was made a deacon in 95 and a priest in January of 2001. And our parish is St. Jonah Orthodox Church. We got a blessing to start the parish in 1998. We began it in the room that I'm sitting in right now, and we started off, we went from there to a small storefront, then to a big storefront, and we bought our property, built a church, and now we're trying to build a bigger church because we ran out of room.
Great. That's good news. Have you ever had any experiences with any military types, Father, in any way?
Mostly people who are veterans, not active duty, but I've had a few.
Okay.
I baptized a guy who was in the National Guard that moved to Pennsylvania, but we accelerated the rate of his baptism because he's getting ready to do that.
Okay. So our target audience here for the Faithful Centurion, again, is Orthodox Christian service members, all the different sister services. And I guess just to provide a little bit of insight into that, it can be a very lonely experience if you are either cradle Orthodox or a new convert, recent convert, and then you get sent to a new location. Whether you're in a new city or not, you may not know what resources are available to you. And specifically, from the military's perspective, if you don't have an Orthodox chaplain, it can be a pretty lonely deal. So some of those things we want to talk about today will help those service members that are coming to our website get some better insights in how to respond, I guess, to those circumstances. So I guess one of them is when individuals are alone, whether they're cradle Orthodox, new converts, potentially inquirers, catechumens, maybe they get deployed in short notice. What are some things they can do to continue worshiping as Orthodox Christians? If they are alone and unafraid, somewhere geographically isolated, do you have any recommendations on how to do that?
Our parish website actually has a liturgical text section, and the first link you'll see when you go there is a reader service Orologian. An Orologian is a book for how to do the services or what the text of the services. And probably the most basic text for somebody in that situation would be Typica, which is a service that you can do when you're not able to attend a liturgy. And we also post the variable portions for Sundays and feast days on our website.
What is that website, Father?
It's Saint spelled out, SAINT, Jonah, JONAH.org.
Okay.
And if you go to the bottom of the page, you'll see a big liturgical text box. If you click on that, it'll take you to the page. And you can do more elaborate services once you get used to them, but I would say start off with Typica and maybe doing something like small comp line the night before, which I also have basically all the services. There's a reader service version of it if it's not a sacrament. So what a lot of even people who've been Orthodox all their life don't realize is that it's possible to have a fairly full liturgical life without a priest. And it's not uncommon for people to be in a situation where they don't have a priest, at least on some occasions. Like, let's say you go on a cruise. Well, you're probably not going to have a priest in tow. And maybe you're going to be on the cruise on a feast day or a Sunday. Well, if you print the text ahead of time, then you could at least do that while you're at sea. It's any kind of a trip that you go on where you're not going to be able to attend a parish. That's something that you can do. But I have had contact with people in the military. I remember there was a colonel that he was a convert and he was in Afghanistan. He told me that he was able to do services regularly thanks to what we were posting. So that's all possible.
Great. Okay. So we will make sure that we provide a link to your website as well. Thank you for that information. As far as, let's say there's a couple of guys, one or two, maybe they're not great singers. Maybe they don't know how to chant. What do you recommend they do in a small group?
Well, it's helpful to learn how to sing the tones because the services will be more beautiful. And, some people, especially younger generations, don't learn how to sing anymore because when I was a kid, you were taught to sing in every grade. And so people, I think, have better musical abilities than a lot of younger people do now because they're just used to singing with headphones on where they can't hear their own voice and they don't know how to carry a note to save their life.
But they think
most people, but most people can learn how to sing if they put their mind to it. And I never learned how to read music, sheet music, at least not very well. I mean, I know if the notes are higher, you go up. If they're lower, you go down. But I just learned how to sing the tones by ear. And when I was a new convert, I started off singing in the choir. And so I got a lot of these things in my head, but I didn't know how to recall them. So in other words, if someone said, sing tone 4, Troparian melody, I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Right.
But then my wife and I moved back to Houston, and we were going to a Russian parish that very often at the vigil there wasn't anybody there, hardly that could sing, and so I wound up becoming the choir. So I basically had a crash course that I'd put myself through learning how to sing stuff, and I just worked on like one tone a week. So if this week was tone 4, I would work on tone 4.
How many tones do they have to learn total?
Well, there are 8 tones, but each tone has 4 different versions of it, although in some cases, like the Centurion melody and the Troparian melody, or maybe even the earmost melody are the same. So sometimes you get a little bit of a break. And there's like Troparian melodies, Centurion melody, Prokimenon melody, which is also what you do for an Alleluia verse. Mm-hmm. And then there's the earmost melody.
Are you aware of any reference anywhere online where, a young soldier wanting to start to learn the tones can go to see things, or are you aware of anything?
Yeah, there's a link on the liturgical text page that's musical resources or something like that.
Okay.
And basically there are sites online you can go to and listen to people singing the various tones, and you can get them in your head that way.
Right.
There's also a CD set you can get called Tone Tutor, which is pretty good. Mm-hmm. Back when I was learning, I just had some cassette tapes, usually bootlegged, that people had done, and I learned it that way. But I learned some mnemonic devices to memorize the tones. But one really easy one is if you've been Orthodox a while, you probably know how to sing something like the Troparian for Christmas, Night Nativity. Well, if you're singing the regular melody, not a fancy version of it, that's tone 4 Troparian melody. And so if you just remember every time you see tone 4 for a Troparian melody that's the same as Thy Nativity, O Christ our God, then you'll be okay. Or tone 1 Troparian melody is, O Lord, save thy people, the Troparian of the cross. So if you start to associate a tone with something that you'll have an easier time remembering it.
A good idea. And so your website, on the link to liturgical texts, there's a link to something about singing as well, you said?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
And like I said, there are websites that have sound files that you can just listen to.
Okay. I'm going to ask you kind of a strange question, Father, along the lines of being alone. What would you do? God forbid it ever happens to anyone that comes to this site. If someone were to become imprisoned, become a prisoner of war, what are some things that you would recommend that they do to help them to get through that very difficult time? Obviously, I'm sure you're going to recommend praying, but maybe a little more specifically, what to recall, maybe what to pray, and anything you think that's of value as if you're having an opportunity to talk to someone who's going to become a prisoner of war? What would you recommend?
Well, obviously, a lot would depend on what kind of access you had to stuff if you were a prisoner of war. But assuming the worst case scenario where you had access to nothing, you would really want to be prepared for that ahead of time, because if you're in that situation and you haven't prepared, then you're stuck with what you got. So maybe just say the Jesus prayer a lot. But the rule of St. Pachomius, which is also linked on the Reader Service Orologian page, is the most ancient prayer rule of the church. And you'll notice, if you pay attention, that most of our services are kind of roughly based on a similar outline to that rule.
Can you expand on that saint, or what's the history of that?
St. Pachomius was one of the Egyptian desert fathers, and this rule of prayer was revealed to him by an angel. And it lends itself to being memorized. And so what I would recommend people do is work on memorizing that prayer rule.
Okay.
And then if you're ever in a situation where you don't have any text, if you've got it memorized, you're all set.
Great. I've never heard of that, Father. Thank you. I also will post that on the links. So that's great. So how about if there are Orthodox Christians, let's say a few together on a military installation, they have no chaplain, they have no priest, no parish nearby, they want to do a Bible study, an Orthodox Bible study. You have any thoughts on that or recommendations how to go about doing something like that?
Well, one way you could go about it would be to get, like, let's say you want to study the Gospel of Matthew. Well, probably the best single commentary you could get on it would be Blessed Theophylact's explanation of the Gospels, which is it's available from St. Herman Press now.
Okay.
And so you could use that as your guide, but I would recommend trying to get some kind of a patristic commentary that you could use as your guide to help you go through it. Now, there are a lot of Bible studies that are posted online, and so you could, whoever is going to lead it could use Bible studies that are already posted to help them, gather the material together. I've got blog posts I have a Blogspot account. It's Father spelled out john.blogspot.com, but there's a lot of articles there on how to read the Bible. And also there's an article I have on resources that you can download for free that will help you.
Okay.
And so I'd recommend using those kinds of things. But, a lot would depend on how much time you had. But assuming you have internet access, I would listen to a good Bible study that someone's done. Our parish does a YouTube. We post YouTube Bible studies. Right now we're going through Leviticus, which is one of the most unpopular books of the Bible, but I'm doing it on purpose because I want to show people that even books that are not easy to understand, there's a lot there. It just requires more work. But, listen to something like that, get a good patristic commentary. St. John Chrysostom's commentaries on the New Testament are available online for free. It's just that he doesn't have a commentary on every book of the New Testament, but he has them on most of them.
What are your thoughts on just getting an Orthodox Study Bible, reading passages, going through the notes in the Orthodox Study Bible with the members of the group?
I mean, that would not be bad. It's just the Orthodox Study Bible's notes are not usually going to satisfy you, and just because they're trying to limit how big the book is, and so the notes are not going to be exhaustive or anything like that. But it's certainly not a bad place to start.
Okay. All right.
Well, there's also an app you can download. It's the Catena Bible app, Catena.
Catena.
It's put out by some Roman Catholics, but the cool thing about it is it's got patristic commentary. You can look up a passage of scripture, click on a verse, and in most cases you're going to pull up patristic commentary. In some cases, there isn't any patristic commentary on that particular verse, but in the New Testament, there's usually quite a bit. Sometimes you might have like 10, 15 quotes from different fathers on that passage, and that doesn't cost you a penny. And it's a really handy way to see what the fathers have to say about something.
Great. There any traps Orthodox Christians, young, maybe in the faith, fall into that they should be wary of when reading the Bible, or any of the early church fathers with respect to the Bible? Anything that they should be cautious of?
Well, if you see something odd, in a father, you probably want to find out if that's a mainstream view or if that's just a unique view of that particular father. But St. Augustine he has a book on Christian doctrine, and in there he talks about how to read the scriptures. And one of the things that he says in there is that if you interpret the scriptures in a way that doesn't contradict the teachings of the church, and it promotes loving God and loving your neighbor, you're never going to be too far off. So if you don't have a commentary from a father, as long as you're staying within those bounds, you're not going to get too far off base. It's just that you obviously, if you're not sure what the fathers say about a passage, if you're teaching a Bible study, you would just want to say, well, maybe it means this, or I think it probably means that, but don't be absolute about something if you're not sure.
Okay. Going back to the topic of loneliness, because it's a serious thing. There are individuals that want to be devout, Orthodox Christians. They want to stay true to their faith. They want to, draw close to Christ. There are a lot of temptations in the military, just like there are in college, just like there are in, I guess, certain professions, certain areas in life. So it's really hard to choose to do the right thing every time, all alone. And then, actually depression can sometimes set in. What kind of advice would you give individuals that are facing that personally?
A really good book on the spiritual life, which gives good advice on this subject, is a book called The Arena by St. Ignatiy Branchaninov, and it's published by Holy Trinity Publishing, Jordanville. And I remember his book is really advice to young monks about the spiritual life. And obviously not everything he says would apply to someone who's not a monk, but most of it would. And one of the things he says to young monks is that you should go to bed tired. So you shouldn't, if you're sitting at a desk all day or something like that, you want to make sure that you're doing something physical so that when it's time for you to go to bed, your body wants to go to bed.
That's actually practical, very practical. Yeah. Work out if you're bored, get your energy out so you'll just appreciate sitting there quietly resting. Yeah, absolutely.
And that also, I think that helps a lot with depression too, because depression a lot of times is a result of us feeling like we're not accomplishing anything. And so if we make sure that we're actually doing productive things and and our bodies are in better shape, we're going to feel better. And you also want to make sure that you're eating well, which means not eating garbage food.
Right.
When I was young, like most Americans, I would eat garbage food all the time, but it's really not good for you. One interesting fact is on Mount Athos, when a monk dies, they bury them for like 3 years, and then they dig up the remains and dust off the bones and put them into a bone house.
Mm-hmm.
But if that monk was an American, they leave them in the ground for 7 years, because Americans don't deteriorate as fast as most people do because they eat all this processed food.
That's horrible.
And so that stuff does bad things to you. It doesn't make you feel good. And it's one of the reasons why Americans tend to be obese, is they're eating things that are not really good. They're not even real food. They're kind of fake food.
That's a very interesting fact.
Yeah.
Well, okay, good to know. If you had individuals that were going off to war in your parish, or you have children as well, right, Father? Okay, if there was a draft, God forbid, there's some big scale something going on. What would you do for those individuals in your parish? What would you do for them as their priest?
Well, the main thing would be is I would try to provide them with some basic texts that what they would be able to carry around with them easily, like a good copy of the Bible that would maybe not be too big, a prayer book, maybe a book like The Arena, something to nibble on spiritually, a prayer rope. But obviously, I would want them to go to confession and communion before they left. And when you're in the military, I would suggest you always ask about, is there an Orthodox chaplain around?
Absolutely.
And I know I had some guys that back when we were in Iraq with a lot more numbers than we are now, they were working for KBR, but they were actually able to go to church because there was a Romanian priest that was with the Romanian troops that were there. And so if you're in a situation where there are other NATO forces, look out for Orthodox countries that are there, like Greece, Romania, Bulgaria.
Yes.
And you're probably going to find a priest.
Mm-hmm. There's also resources on our website. There are a couple links. OCA.org has the chaplain's link. The canonical, bishop's website also has. Right. Those need to get updated. That's something we're going to try to do a better job about for our folks that we're trying to help out. So here's a question. A lot of soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines drink monster drinks, power drinks all the time. A lot of them dip or chew. Some of them are still, I think, smoking, although maybe that's the older guys. I'm not sure how many young people are smoking nowadays. And definitely a lot of them vape. Do you have any thoughts on those things? Have you ever brought that up in a homily? Have you ever talked to anyone in your parish that had those type of habits or addictions, I guess?
I've talked to people about it. I mean, smoking is not a great thing. It's not, in the Russian church, if you're a monk or a clergyman, you're not supposed to smoke ever. But Tsar Nicholas smoked. So, I mean, I don't think you could say that it's, an unpardonable sin or anything like that. But on Manathos, they refer to as incense to the devil. So that's maybe something to keep in mind.
Incense. That'll make you feel guilty every time you smoke a cigarette. Okay.
But, if it's, I don't think there's anything wrong with nicotine in and of itself. It's actually got some good health benefits. So, chewing nicotine gum would be an option. Vaping, I know, has some health risk associated with it. So I kind of would stay away from that.
Yeah. And
chewing tobacco and dipping can have some problems in terms of like the possibility of getting mouth cancer.
Right.
But just chewing nicotine gum, as far as I know, is not a problem. There's also Alps has like these nicotine pouches, and I think they're safer than just chewing tobacco, just because there's stuff in tobacco that apparently promotes the possibility of getting cancer.
So besides those things that very clearly cause cancer, I guess, is moderation something that's acceptable if it's done in moderation, or what? I mean, are you just not supposed to do it because it's bad for you one time, or what's your thought on that?
I think generally we don't want to do stuff that we know is bad for our body because, the St. Paul tells us that our body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. And so if you're doing stuff intentionally that's harming your body long term, I don't think that's a good thing.
Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Okay, Father. Well, those are a lot of the typical questions that we're getting, things that service members are concerned with. Is there anything that you want to pass on or say if you have an opportunity to any of the service members that are serving, whether it's about whether to serve or not, to join or not to join, any advice that you have?
Well, when I was on the process of becoming Orthodox, I didn't think my wife was going to convert. So I actually enlisted in the Marine Corps in 1990. And so I wound up getting injured. I was praying, God, if you don't want it to happen, don't let it happen. Well, God answered my prayer and I injured my back.
No kidding.
But I remember when I was going through the military processing center that they were at one point asking me questions that would be put on my dog tag, I guess. And one of the questions was, what religion are you? And I told them I'm an Orthodox Christian. They couldn't find it. And then they said, well, we'll just code you Roman Catholic. And I said, no, you're not. So I made them find it.
Yes.
But if you're a convert, you might want to make sure that your records get updated to reflect what religion you actually are, because otherwise you might wind up getting a Baptist or a Catholic funeral if you wind up getting killed. So that's
You're
one
right.
thing I would recommend.
That is a great point, Father. Yes, and dog tags and your files to make sure that they're accurately reflected. If you tell someone you're Orthodox, they may assume you're an Orthodox Jew, and
Right.
before you know it, your dog tags have that on there. Or if they think you're Greek, they may put Greek Orthodox. I mean, you just to stick to your guns. Tell them what you are. Don't be embarrassed by it. Don't be ashamed by it, and make sure they do it right. That's.
I think in 1990 they found it under Eastern Orthodox Christian, but
Okay.
they may have changed the way they categorize things since then. But
Yeah.
I would just make sure that they're very clear that you're not a Jew and you're not a Catholic, because otherwise you might wind up with the Star of David and you're on the military cemetery that you get buried in. So,
Oh no. All right, Father. Anything else that comes to mind? How do you
I would say,
how do you feel about people serving, Father? I'll throw that out there.
well, I come from a family with a lot of people who have served. My father was a World War II veteran. When the military was going woke under Biden, I got to the point where I would no longer advise people to go into the military, but obviously a lot of that has improved. It's certainly a good opportunity. I have 2 daughters and now I've got 3 granddaughters, but when my daughters were, getting close to 18, I recommended to both of them that they at least think about going to the military. Neither of them did, but it's certainly it's a good opportunity to get benefits that will help you for the rest of your life, and even skills that you can use for the rest of your life. So it's certainly not a bad thing, and I think certainly serving your country is an honorable thing.
Some Orthodox Christians are that I know of are really opposed to it because they see the military as an instrument of national power, which it is, and they're not necessarily happy with the way our country has been using the military with, I guess, wars of choice in the past, and then the history here. So, any thoughts on that? If they say there's a conflict, you can't serve God and the country through the military.
It certainly, these kinds of problems could come up. I mean, when I enlisted in the Marine Corps, it occurred to me later on that had I actually gone active duty, that I would have possibly been in a situation where I would be dealing with whether or not I was going to be going to war with the Serbs. And I wouldn't have been able to do that in good conscience. But I suppose if somebody wanted to protect themselves, they could just make sure that they had a MOS that would not likely put them in a situation where they would be killing other people.
That's true.
And there certainly are plenty of those.
That's right. That is an option for sure. Yep. Okay, Father. Well, this has been great. Thank you very much for your time. A lot of good words of wisdom. Appreciate it. We will list the resources that you mentioned, and thank you for telling about those things. And good luck to everything going on with you.
Thank you.